All right, so today what I'd like to do is look at how we create 3D viewing of our data. And there's a couple of tools that QGIS has for that. The first thing you need to do, of course, in your map is you need to put in a base map, and I'm using either the Esri satellite or the Google hybrid. And the way I got to those was by going to quick map services on the web and then choosing either Esri or Google. And you have many different options that you can use for these. So I chose those, and that's what I have as my base map.
I can provide you with a variety of options for many different things to give you the most helpful.
I wasn't asking for you to talk to me, AI. That's fine. Okay, so what we're going to do then is go to Marrakesh in a web service called Earth Data at ASF Data Search Vertex. Because if I just wanted to look at 3D here and I went to View and went to 3D Maps and I created a new 3D map view, you can see that if I bend it down with the middle mouse button, there is no elevation in this. It's flat, and it's flat because it doesn't have any information to go by in order to create digital elevation. It's just a flat map. So you need to bring in a digital elevation map, and a good spot to get that, it turns out, is search.asf.alaska.edu and look for the ASF Data Search Vertex. And then you can zoom in and find, there's my Marrakesh region, and you can then start drawing and say, well, I want about that much. That's the area. And once you've defined your area for this, sort of like the USGS map thing, then you want to get a data set that is called ALOS pulsar, because that is 12.5 meters rather than 30 meters that we were getting from the USGS. And once you've selected that and you've selected this polygon as your area of interest, so having that and having, don't worry about the date now, we just go for search, it'll load a bunch of options, and you can see that the regions that are mapped by ALOS pulsar overlap here. And so I'll probably want this one, I'll want this one, I'll want this one, and I'll want this one if I want to cover the area. So each little quadrant that I pick, I have options for getting the map from. And when you select it, you can go and get a high-res terrain, and download it here, or a level 2.2 image and download it here, then move on to the next section. And this one only has level 2.2 image, and download it here, and then go to the next section and pick one level 2.2 image or a high-res terrain corrected, and go to the next one. So you can start getting these images and download them to your hard drive. Now, in my case, I had downloaded 4 images, and so when I go back to my QGIS and I go to Layer, Add Raster Layer, and then I select what you'll see here. I have one here. I'm going to select not the smallest one. So this one here is 96 kilobytes. I'm going to select something that has more data to it, so 51 megabytes. There's a couple of others here. I'm going to select that one. I'm going to say open and add, and it's going to add it. And you're not going to, there you go, you see it because it's above the Google Hybrid. That's one section. I have 4 sections. If you recall from here, I picked 4 of these, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't think I need the other maps, but that's all the coverage that you have that have overlap with it. So I'm going to add the next one that I downloaded. Again, it is layer, add raster layer, and then it is in here. That, now I have that and that, and I'll do it until I've covered my area. So add layer, raster layer, go back, take this one, add it, And there's a little more coverage, and I'm just missing this last one down here. So I go to add layer, add raster layer, come in here and pick my final one there. All right, so I've got those areas there and there on the map. So now when I go to my view layer, view 3D maps, I'll make a new one. And you can see the coverage area. And you can see now when I bend and holding that middle mouse button, takes a while. That's my coverage area I want to look at. It's still flat, and the reason it's flat is because it hasn't picked its projection from anything. So I need to go to the toolbox here and go to configure and say I don't want a flat terrain. I want a DEM raster layer to be the source of the terrain, and the elevation is going to be one of these 4 maps that I just put in. So I'll do that and I'll say apply. And now you can see we're beginning to get terrain information. Now it's black because, let's bring this down there, because we've got that information on top. So we need to bring the Google hybrid map, if that's what we're going to use, bring it up on top of that so it lays over like a texture. And then when we look at our 3D map, it's not this one here, it's this one here. When we look at that, it's supposed to, it needs to update. So let's close it and let's reopen it. View 3D maps. And it's still showing it like that. Why is that? Maybe if we just turn off these. So they're there being used, but they're not being seen. Let's look and see. There we go. All right. So they're turned off, so they're not being seen, but you can see that we have now the elevation information. It seems a bit extreme though. So here's where you need to go into the configuration and get out of the vertical scale and back it down to something like 0.4. That is more reasonable. Okay. And that's how this 3D map information works. It is giving us the information from this particular map. What if we try this one here and apply it? Then we get to that other section, you see. And maybe we want to bring this up to 0.5. Yep. And if we want to look at another section, we'd have to go in to configure and choose that next section, and it's going to jump to that part of the map there. And if I use this one here and apply it, it'll jump to this part of the map. So it's picking up the elevations and it's clipping to what those DEMs were. What is nice about this tool is that if you want to zoom in or do a video on it, you can go to the animation and there's keyframes down here at the bottom. And you can say, I want to add a keyframe there at 0 seconds. And you can move forward. There's already a keyframe at that point. Okay. Move forward, and when we get halfway through, let's see if we really zoomed in on this, did a turn to look at Tubcal like that. We could add a keyframe there at 163 and then continue moving out, and we can turn our map around. So you can make these fly-throughs, which are kind of fun to have. So let's do like that, and then add a keyframe over here. And then when you do the playing of it, you get this zoom in, spin around and zoom out, for example, as it's playing the keyframes. All right, so that's the built-in one, and it's not perfect, and it only allows you to use one DEM at a time. Let's close that. There's a different program that does 3D viewing once you have your DEMs in that I think is better. It comes from the plugins, and it is called QGIS 2. There it is. QGIS 2.3JS, 3D visualization. So I've downloaded and installed that plugin and enabled it, and it shows up as this triangle here, or it shows up under Web QGIS 3D Supporter. Now the problem is it's going to give you an error message because of a compatibility issue with the QGIS 3D view that we just looked at. And so you have to close it and start this to start again, and that can sometimes be a bit of a pain. Sometimes it will work if you go to Manage 3D Map View and remove this, and you remove your other 3D map view, and remove your other 3D map view, and then close it, and then if you then go to the QG3S and start it again, and you still get the same problem. So it's really hard to close the 3D map view. It's just a mess. So what you're going to have to do then is save and restart QGIS. And I know that's a pain, and I've looked at different ways to do it, and so far reopening QGIS is the only way to get the plugin to work once you've tried to use the built-in 3D view. So you start it again and let it do its bit of loading. Restore loading plugins, and so it's going to put those plugins in again. That's what's taking the time. Restoring the loaded plugins. So now we're ready. So I'm going to open up my program, and there we are. And of course, you know, we do have those DEMs that we brought in. So they're there, and they're underneath the S3 satellite view or the Google hybrid view. So now that we have them in, we're not going to go to 3D map views. So do not do that. Instead, we're going to go to this little icon here, QGIS to 3GS Exporter, and now we have a much faster map, but again, it's still in 2D. So what do we do about that? It says here DEM flat plane. The reason it says flat plane is because this has not been projected properly. So I'm going to close this again, and I'm going to go to my DEMs, and I'm going to have to take them and go to raster and do the projection and say warp or reproject. So this has got to be reprojected as a 3857, not the 4326, 3857. And that's all I need to do there. And reproject it. And it's going to pop a reprojected version up here. Now, that reprojected version should have showed up on the map. See why it didn't. So there's, okay. So that's the reprojected version of it. Let me turn this off. Turn this off. There's those. I wanted to see if my reprojected image comes up at all. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't come up. Alright, let's try this again. Let me delete this. Okay, so reproject. Let's get rid of that. Let's go back to this band here. And no, that one, let's do this one here. Let's reproject this here by clicking on it. And go to raster. And go to projections and go to warp. And the input layer is a 32629. And target. Try that. Run it. Says it was. Okay, yeah, it's there. There's the reprojected version. Coming in there. This one here we can turn off. And so we have, okay. So let's say that we're just using that one reprojected. And let me turn my Google Hybrid back on underneath it. And let's now go to here. And we see that there is now that plane there reprojected. When I turn that on and turn off the flat plane, now I got some 3D imagery. Now to get that underneath the map, I'm going to take this and bring it underneath the Google Hybrid, reprojected, but the projection stays, as you can see here. And this one should, now if I reproject all of these, so there's one of them reprojected. Let me bring it up above here. So that reprojection is now showing up as digital elevation. I should be able, as I said, to reproject all of these. So if I reproject this one and come to select it and go to raster and then projections, warp, reproject, and see what it does. Hold on. Okay, good. So we have that one reprojected, and let's try another one of these. So there's this one here. I'm going to click on it and go to raster, projections, reproject, and run it. I've got those two. See, because they're throwing them up on top as temporary layers. This little, what looks like a chip, says temporary layer only. So we're getting these reprojections, and they're coming in on the map. So I'm going to reproject this layer here, raster, projections, warp, reproject, run it. And I've got those three, and then finally I had a fourth one here, this one here. And I'm going to go to raster, projections, warp, reproject, run it. All right, so I have the four areas that I've reprojected over here, and there's still, however, there's the flat plane, and then there's the reprojections. And when I build the reprojected, you're going to have this information, the mountain information. As I said, it's underneath because it's been because it's on top. But I think with the way this one works, which is good, is I should be able to simply turn these reprojections off in terms of visibility, but keep their reprojected digital elevation information. Let's see after it builds what we end up with. Oh, yes, it did. All right, so we've got those reprojections, And they're all showing up this time, as you can see. But again, the problem is they're too big. And so in here, then you want to go to Scene and go to Scene Settings and change the exaggeration. Let's see if we make it 0.2. What does that do? Let it re-project. Yeah, a little better. And then we have the digital elevation information that is in here. None of these are as good as ArcGIS Pro, but at least you have this capability. Let me see if I bring this up to 0.4. What would that give? Something exaggerated, probably really crazy. Yeah, mountains and stuff. This also, by the way, does let you. This does let you set up a scene with animations. So when you go to the camera widgets, set camera position, add layer, flat plane, there should be an animation function in this. And I'm just trying to see where that is. Animation. So window panels, animation, and when you're in animation layer, then you have camera motion, and there's a little add button just like we saw in the 3D view. So you can start with your map looking like, let's say, a whole map there, and then create a keyframe which drops in there. And then you can go and zoom in to an area. Let's say we zoom into Marrakesh and do a twist as we do so, and then add another keyframe. And you can see that it also lets you name them. So this would be like Marrakesh if you wanted to put that in there. And keyframe 1 would be named the whole map. So you can have fun with that, and then go in and add a third keyframe where you drive down the road and do a simulation of driving down the road to Tubkal and put in a keyframe, and then do a spin to look at Tubkal zoomed in, National Park, and add that. And then this will be Tubkal. And say OK. And this one here is to Tubkal. And then when you go and you play these, and you put it in a loop, you have a zoom in to Marrakesh, turn around, go down, and then find Tubkal. And then you can do these fine tunings on this where you can come in and you see that these are the keyframes. You can decide how it eases in and what the delays are. So maybe you make a delay. Maybe you make this last instead of 2 seconds, make it last 5 seconds, which is 5,000 milliseconds. And then go to, so then come up in here and make this delay for 3,000 and delay for 2,000 is the duration, delay, and then come up here and make this delay for 3,000 milliseconds and something like that. And then when you hit play here, it takes much longer to zoom in. It's much more nice. It does a stop for a delay, then it turns, then it stops, and then it does delay, it then turns, and boom. All right. It may even be that you can copy, maybe you can't. No, I guess you can't copy keyframes. It's not as good as Blender, but it does at least, yeah, it lets you set those things. So maybe then we come out for a final keyframe here and add a keyframe. This will take the keyframes away. This one lets you edit them, and this will be back to bird's eye. for example. And also, I would want to make this one delay. If it'll let me edit it, it won't. So since it's the last one, it doesn't let me edit anything there. Okay. So now when we loop, come in, we zoom in, we turn around, we zoom in, we stop, we turn around, and we zoom all the way out, and we'll do it again. So that is some of the power of QGIS to 3GS Exporter. Remember then that you must not be using 3D map views. If you do, you will have to restart the program in order to use the Q3GS Exporter. And it always has to build, so look down here. And then you have this ability to do these animations, which is nice. All right, those are those capabilities I wanted to show you today. And make sure that you reproject your DEMs using raster projections warp. You don't have to change the parameters, but reproject so that you can get them to work as the elevations for the textures. Hope that's helpful to you.